Hey guys, this is your host Thomas Tyree here from On the Hop Podcast. Today, this will be the Combat Series episode number 138 for you guys today. And to kick off the Combat Series this week, we'll start off in the sport of boxing. And I'll be sharing my fight summary that took place last night in the sport of boxing between Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson. So, it was Shakur Stevenson who defeated Teofimo Lopez by unanimous decision to become the new WBO In-Ring Magazine super lightweight champion in the sport of boxing last night. So my thoughts on that fight at 140 pounds. Honestly, this was a masterclass performance by Shakur Stevenson. I scored the fight 11 rounds to 1 in favor of Shakur Stevenson. And I think everybody around the world that watched this fight or was in attendance at Madison Square Garden can agree the only round that Teofimo Lopez won was the 8th round in this 12-round championship fight between the two respective fighters. But honestly, this was a damn near shutout by Shakur Stevenson. And this was supposed to be a 50-50 fight. Both Shakur and Teo in the same age range, both in the prime of their careers, both multiple-time world champions at different weight classes. But Shakur Stevenson proved it was levels to this game. He controlled the pace of the fight throughout the whole entire 12 rounds with his jab. I think Shakur clearly has one of the best jabs in the sport. And Teo had no damn answer for the jab for all 12 rounds. The jab was in full effect. The 1-2 combinations were in effect. The hooks. Shakur was winning the counter-punching battle. And I'm thinking to myself, Teo is a great counter-puncher. Teo has great footwork, but he just looked a step slower against Shakur Stevenson, and he proved its levels to this game. And Shakur's defense was top tier as well. Let's talk about that. The Philly shell, he was in full effect using the Philly shell, the high guard. Teo tried all night long to craft his way into the inside. Yeah, he did have success landing body shots here and there, but it was not effective enough to throw Shakur Stevenson off his game plan. And I'm proud for Shakur to stick to the game plan. And speaking of Shakur's defense, Teofimo Lopez only landed 15% of his punches landed in that 12-round championship fight against Shakur Stevenson. The defense was just tremendous, and Shakur blocked out Teofimo Lopez's best attributes. The power shots, the overhand right, it was not getting home. And Teo, every time he thought he could get into the inside, Shakur just used the jab to close him out and close the door on Teo's momentum that he would try to build up as the fight went on. But Shakur Stevenson dominated Teo off the front foot. Nobody could say that Shakur Stevenson is a runner. He's done it in his last 2 to 3 fights against William Cepeda, a pressure fighter. He did it against Teofimo Lopez, who is also a pressure fighter, fought well off the front foot, and fought well fighting forward, bringing the action to Teo. And he did not run. He stood in the pocket and gave Teofimo Lopez a lot of punishment with a jab last night. And the jab, you could tell the jab were some powerful jab shots because the eye was split open, cut open. Teofimo Lopez was bleeding on the left side of his face. And honestly, if Shakur didn't want to play it safe, he could have got the knockout victory. Earlier, I want to say it was either rounds 3 through 5, Shakur landed a body shot that almost made Teofimo Lopez touch his gloves on the canvas. That would have counted as a knockdown. And I think right there, if Shakur really wanted to go for it, he could have scored 2 to 3 knockdowns and possibly made Teofimo Lopez quit on the stool. But this was a masterclass performance by Shakur Stevenson. He clearly proved moving up from 135 to 140. He didn't need a tune-up. He looked much stronger, much faster, and was overall the better fighter than Teo. Used his boxing IQ to just have his way against Teo all damn night. This was honestly the best 50-50 performance that I've seen since Terrence Crawford fought Earl Spence back in the summer of 2023. That's how special this performance was against Teofimo Lopez of Shakur Stevenson last night. Honestly, this was one hell of a fight for Shakur. And I want to say, what the hell was going on with Teofimo Lopez's game plan last night against Shakur Stevenson? This needs to be talked about because there was a lot of instances in the fight where I felt like if Teo had a better game plan, the fight could have been a little bit more competitive, but probably would have been the same outcome. But if you looked at Teofimo Lopez's corner work in between rounds, I'm just going to read everything that I noted that happened. I know damn well there were no adjustments for 12 rounds in between rounds where you get 60 seconds, 55 to 60 seconds to talk to your corner. His lead hand was down. That was one mistake I saw out of Teofimo Lopez's game plan. The lead hand was down. multiple times in this fight. There was no damn head movement. I barely saw any head movement from Teo trying to avoid the jab, avoid the reflexes, the counter punches that Shakur Stevenson was giving him, and he did not have an answer for the jab. There was nobody in the corner telling Teo you need to defend the jab who possibly get home in the inside to do your damn thing. And his quotes that I documented and the rest of the world documented from Teofimo Sr. was absolutely horrific. He needs to be fired, and Teofimo Lopez needs to get a trainer that will really help him get to the next level, or he's going to be known as an A-, B+ fighter once he fights top-tier competition again. And the quotes I have from his father, "You'll hate yourself tomorrow." The fuck does that mean? I need all the encouragement I can get when I'm fighting a caliber fighter like Shakur. Where's your power? Teofimo Sr. Obviously, the power is being taken away. Shakur in the Philly shell and the high guard is taking away your son's best attributes. He's not going to be able to land the power shots. We got to find a way on the inside. That's what everybody was saying. Even the commentary team was saying it. But every time Teo tried to get in the inside, Shakur would close the door on him with some counter shots. You should have had some type of game plan for Teo to find his way into the inside very early in the fight before it became a belt-to-ass treatment. And also, you got to win the counterpunch battle. Obviously, you could say, or that's what he should have said, I should say. You got to win the counterpunch battle. That's what I would tell my son. You got to find your way in the inside. You got to do a better way to defend the jab. Those are the things I would have told Teo in between rounds, because you could tell the confidence. He was just getting broken down by Shakur in the ring. And then you get to the corner, you get a break from Shakur, you get to the corner, and you're just being broken down by your father, not getting no advice by anybody else in your corner. I would fire my whole entire team and start from scratch. I would if I'm Teofimo Lopez. But that's a different topic for a different day with fathers in the sport. But Shakur Stevenson is now the fastest 4-division world champion since Oscar De La Hoya was a 4-division world champion early in his boxing career. And Shakur is now one of the fastest 4-division world champions in boxing history. Just at 28 years of age, under 30 professional boxing fights, Shakur is now a 4-division world champion. He's actually a world champion still at 135, which I'll talk about, the WBC champion. And now he's the WBO super lightweight champion and the Ring Magazine champion. Mind you, you get the Ring Magazine title for beating the best fighter in that damn division. And what did he just do? He just put belt to ass on the best fighter that 140 pounds in the sport of boxing had to offer, and Teofimo Lopez. But with that being said, what's next for Shakur Stevenson? Now, I'm looking at the landscape of boxing for Shakur Stevenson, and I think Shakur Stevenson has just become a star in the sport of boxing. Him and Teofimo Lopez just sold out Madison Square Garden, one of the most prestigious arenas in sports history, and I think Shakur has a lot of options moving forward. He's still the WBC lightweight champion at 135 pounds, and now he's the super lightweight champion holding the WBO and Ring Magazine world titles at 140 pounds. And he could possibly move up to welterweight 147 to possibly fight Conor Benn. I'll get to that. But if Shakur wants to stay at 135, he can possibly still unify at this division. Now, I think 135 is a division that's starting to lose its flavor and its touch, because stars like Gervonta Davis is clearly not a part of the sport, was just stripped of the WBA title and arrested. I know he got bailed out, but I don't think he's coming back to the sport, unfortunately. But Shakur can still unify with other champions. I'm looking at Raymond, who is the IBF champion, Abdullah Mason, the young kid who just won the WBO title back in November against Sam Noquez, or he could still fight Floyd Schofield. If you guys remember, that fight was actually supposed to take place in Saudi Arabia around this time last year, but Floyd Schofield had to pull out of the event because he was sick 3 days before the fight occurred. So he could still revisit that if he wants to. I think Shakur can stay put at 140 pounds and possibly unify at this division as well. There's some good champions. Gary Antoine Russell from the DMV, WBA champion. You have Richard Hitchinson, I call him the Dollar General version of Devin Haney, but he's the IBF champion. Dalton Smith, who just won the WBC title, upsetting Matias earlier in the month. Like, there's a lot of good fights at 135, 140 for Shakur. If he wants to go up to welterweight against Conor Benn, I don't see that happening, but it would be a fun build-up. I think Shakur clearly has said there would have to be a rehydration clause in order for that fight to take place. I don't know if Conor Benn would agree to that or not. But I think, honestly, that fight is a similar fight that we just saw between Shakur Stevenson and Teofimo Lopez. Conor Benn is a good fighter, but he's never been a world champion. And Teofimo Lopez was the best opposition that Shakur fought. I think Conor Benn is slightly worse than Teofimo Lopez. In a good way, because I think Conor Benn's a good fighter, but it's levels to this game. Honestly, the fight build-up would be fun, but it would be a similar fight that we just saw between Shakur and Teo, where Shakur just boxes Conor Benn's head off with Conor Benn being aggressive, missing wildly with a lot of powerful shots, and Shakur just controls the pace of the fight, using the jab and the counter punches. But I think there's a lot of good fights for Shakur moving forward. I think a star has clearly been born, and after this performance against Teo, you got to consider him to be a top 5, however you have your pound-for-pound rankings in the sport. So Shakur, it's up for him if you're a Shakur fan, and it's a lot to be excited for the next half of 2026 for Shakur Stevenson and company. To close out, what's next for Teofimo Lopez? It's back to the drawing board for Teo. It's back to the drawing board after suffering his second career loss. Now, guys, I still think Teo is still a great fighter. And he's a 2-division world champion for a reason. He always shined in championship fights against Vasily Lomachenko, Josh Taylor, Arnold Barboza. He just ran into his toughest test against Shakur Stevenson and unfortunately failed. So I think Teo, he stated on his social media that he's moving up to 147 at welterweight. I think there's still an argument to be made that he could still stay at 140. I mean, he was the best guy there for years. Why turn away from this division? I think if he wanted to stay at 140, he could still fight Richard Hitchens for the IBF title. There's still Dalton Smith for the WBC title, or Gary Antoine Russell for the WBA title. Like, you could still chase another title other than Shakur Stevenson, but it looks like 147 is for him, and that might be the good choice, because eventually fighters grow out of their weight classes, and he's been here since 2022, since that loss against George Kambosos. So if he wants to stay at 147, or he wants to go 147, that's good for him, but he's going to have to run into fighters like Devin Haney. I think right now, if he fights Devin Haney and doesn't get better, it's a similar fight that we just saw between Shakur and Teo. But at 147, he could still collect championship gold before running into fighters like Devin or Shakur possibly again down the line. You still have Rolly Romero, who's the WBA champion. There's Ryan Garcia or Manny Pacquiao. So I think there's options for Teofimo Lopez moving forward. I still think he's a star, but if you don't show a good performance or you lose in your next performance, then I think fans should get a little concerned. But it's not the end of the world. I think Teo could clearly get back on track. But that is my fight summary between Teofimo Lopez and Shakur Stevenson.